Hey guys, this is Aaron from Fight Quality. Today I've got a pair of the Rival RS1 sparring boxing gloves. Let's check it out. So Rival Boxing are a slightly more premium brand. They're known for their more creative and innovative designs. And they're led by Russ Amber, who's well known as a boxing coach, and he takes across his passion and experience to try and reinvent the industry. So the RS1 is one of Rival's slightly better known models, partly because of its distinctive design, but also because it's been used by many pro boxers in their own training. So these gloves are designed as sparring gloves, and they're available in 14 ounce, 16 ounce or 18 ounce. I'm a slightly lighter guy, so I chose to go for 14 ounce, but if you're bigger, you got the 16 ounces, or even 18 ounces, which is something not many brands do, which is really nice to see. So originally these gloves were released in 3 colours. There's black, red or blue. But more recently they've released 2 new versions, which is the gold version here and a bright lime green version. I went for gold because I fancy being a little bit flashy this time, and I really like the colour, it's come out really nicely. So these gloves are obviously fairly heavy on visuals. You have visuals printed on the back of the hand, on the cuff, you have some on the thumb and the inside of the hand, you just have bits here as well as the fingers as well. So really all over there are graphics printed on, which I think it's quite nice. There's nothing too in your face, it's all quite muted and it all goes with the theme of the gloves. There's also this rubber patch down here which has the Rival logo as well, which I think the fact that it's rubber stitched in is just that little bit nicer than just having a fabric patch stitched in like most boxing gloves have. I do find this Ergo Lace Track System logo is a little bit, stands out a bit too much on the gold version of these gloves. On other versions it's fine because there's orange in the designs of the gloves, but on these it just really stands out. I feel like they could have just used a different colour, they could have just replaced it with white. Obviously one of the biggest factors in the appearance is the way they're styled. You have this Ergo X Lace Track which just crosses across here, which looks really distinctive from any other gloves. Usually you'll see either ridges or a flat section, so it's really unique to see this crossing over here. Obviously this has its functional benefits too, but we'll come back to that in a minute. But visually it just looks really cool, I think. Right, so in terms of materials, those original 3 colours, black, red and blue, are made with genuine leather. But if you go for one of the newer colours, the gold or the lime green, they're actually made with a rich PU, which isn't really a real leather, it's a synthetic leather. Don't get me wrong, these are fairly high quality, but it's definitely not leather. It looks like leather, but to touch it's slightly smoother, it has that slightly plasticky feel. It doesn't quite bend over and fold over around the edges of the glove quite as nicely as real leather does. But overall it's actually really good, it feels really sturdy, it's fairly smooth, it looks really good, and I think if you glance at these you probably wouldn't tell that it is real leather, which is obviously what you want. You don't want those really horrible plasticky looking gloves. In theory what this does mean is that if you go for one of the original 3 colours, the leather will mean that they're slightly better quality. Obviously we haven't tested the leather versions, so we can't comment on that, but typically that's what we tend to find with the leather gloves. One problem I have found, and I don't know if this is just because of the rich PU, but the graphics are actually starting to rub off slightly after a little bit of use. Obviously this isn't ideal, and I can't speak for the leather versions whether they have the same issue, but just in some of the areas that get knocked and used, just the graphics are just starting to rub off slightly and I can see a bit of gold underneath. Obviously this isn't ideal, it's not the end of the world, but it's not something you really like to see on your gloves. Right, so let's come back to the wrist and laces again. So what you have here is the Ergo Lace Track System, or X-Lace Track as it's sometimes referred to. What this does is, like ridges, it guides the laces around the glove, except this does it in an X fashion, which leaves it much more angular, which in theory holds your wrist in a slightly better position. The wrist also has a nice circular shape to it naturally. It's not flat, it does actually fit the shape of a human arm, which I think helps a little bit more when you get that tight fit as well. I've got skinny wrists and they actually fit me really nicely as well, which is something that often some gloves I find I just have to really tighten the laces, but these fit much more naturally around my wrist. So as you can see, it fits quite closely around the hand, it's very slim, it's really nicely fitted. I just tie it up quickly, but if you do it properly you can really hone in on that and really get a nice tight feel as well, even if you do have slimmer wrists like me. One thing I like about these gloves is because of where it's so slim, it feels like the wrist goes straight up and then juts out, so it more fits the natural feel of your hand. Most gloves just kind of arc out with the thumb, whereas this has a definite end of the wrist up here. So it really follows the shape of your wrist a lot closer than other gloves. While other gloves fit your wrists kind of loosely, these actually fit really closely. They feel like they're really designed to the shape of your hand. So as you can see, the laces also fit really easily in these grooves here. You can also kind of tuck your laces underneath a little bit just before you tape up or whatever, just to keep them out of the way, just to stop them jutting out, which I think helps that a little bit more. I've recently been using these with my lace and loop glove converters, which are a great way to get all the benefits of a lace up but turn it into a Velcro so you can do it up yourself. We've already released a review on that, so check it out, we'll leave the link in the description. So the padding on these is a sort of medium density. It's not fluffy by any means, but it's also not too dense and firm, which means you can make a good contact but at the same time stay well protected. There's a good amount of padding, but at the same time it doesn't feel too thick. So it's fairly well distributed all across the glove. It actually makes these feel fairly compact. I think it's mainly because of the way they fit the hand really closely. So where it feels compact, it makes it really good for slipping in gaps. It really makes you practice that block because you're not hiding behind a huge shield. Obviously this is just a 14 ounce version we've been testing, so the 16 and 18 ounce will obviously be considerably bigger. But it is really good if you're looking for a slightly more fitted feel as opposed to a huge massive glove. They feel fairly balanced as well, so they don't feel too top heavy as some gloves do. I think it's partly because of the wrist, there's a fair amount of weight there. But it just means that they feel really nice and balanced, so when you're using them, it just feels a lot more natural. It doesn't feel like you've got just weights on the end of your fists. The hand compartment inside, for me, it fits really closely, but it's not tight by any means. It's not that my hand's being squeezed in place with the padding like some gloves. It's more because the way that the glove is designed to fit the shape of your hand a lot better and obviously hold you in place around the wrist, which I think it just means that it feels much more comfortable because you're being held in place properly. You're not just being squashed in place. There's a fair amount of finger movement there. You won't be able to open your hand up straight away with these, but they're not tight or stiff by any means, so you do have the ability to parry and grab onto things if you need to. One other minor problem I have with these gloves is there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of ventilation, especially around the fingers. All I do find is you've got to make sure you open them up and just open up the laces a little bit just to air them out after they've been used, otherwise they can just feel a little bit damp. I'm sure they'll end up smelling after time if you don't look after them properly. So in the UK, these gloves retail at £159.99, which, let's be honest, that's not really cheap. For a little bit more, you could be looking at a completely custom pair of boxing gloves, like the iBox customized gloves we had designed for us. What you are getting with these gloves, however, is a much better fit, a really well designed glove, and some, well, innovation really in the way the strap works and holds you in securely. So if you're really looking for that expert fit, these are probably the gloves for you. Obviously, you do have to balance up your options. You could have something just as great from a different brand, but I think that if you're looking for a good fit and comfort, these are probably a great choice. So just to round up our thoughts about this review, the lace track fits really well. It helps you secure it really nicely. It's a nice snug fit around the wrist. It fits really good, especially on slimmer wrists. There are some great designs going on. The visuals are really brilliant, and there's some truly nice colours out there to get. On the flip side, the visuals do start to rub off a little bit over time. The gold and green versions actually aren't real leather, they are PU leather, which obviously isn't quite as good. And the ventilation isn't brilliant, so you do need to be aware that you air these out properly. Right, so that's this review done. If you like this, check out more from fightquality.com, where we've got a load of written reviews and guides. Or if you like the video stuff, head over to our YouTube page and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.